Hello, everyone. Welcome to Take the Black Live, the only show on the internet that dares talk about things like Star Wars, Marvel, Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, dragons, space lasers, all that kind of stuff. I don't know why anyone else has done it. We're the only one who have thought of it so far. I am Dan Selke, the editor of winnerscoming.net, here with Mia Johnson, editor of dorksideoftheforce.com, and a special guest who will introduce himself now.
Hey, Ezra Kirk here from An Unexpected Podcast. Happy to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Of course. Yeah, Ezra. So you run the Unexpected podcast Talkin Tolkien.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a lot of crossover. Our fans are big into, we're big into, I just listed all that crap, didn't I? Fantasy, sci-fi, all that nonsense. And obviously, there's a lot going on in the Lord of the Rings space these days between the Hobbit films wrapping up a bit ago and now a new giant 500 to $1 billion Amazon television show coming round the bend. I guess I'll start with Ezra. Why a Tolkien podcast, and how long has it been around?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was telling you before we started, the podcast started around, I think, late 2017. My buddy Lane, who couldn't be here, he's taking care of his daughter today. He wanted to say hello to everybody, and I was actually hoping he would be here so he could literally take the black and recite the vow. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. I was hoping we'd have to run him through that, but that's all right. But we started it in 2017, and we've always, I guess, going back to we went to high school together, middle school actually, and we would always talk about Lord of the Rings. And I used to run a Star Wars podcast that he listened to back in the day, 2014, around the time Disney, acquired Star Wars. And he listened to it, and we were in his kitchen one time, and he was like, we heard about the news for the show. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if we got back into, it had been years since we got back into, reading the books and just even watching the movies and talking about it. So he was like, let's find something that we can just sit down and do. And it really just started off with us sitting across from the table, two guys talking about Tolkien. And it was, as far as we knew, there was just show news. We didn't really think a whole lot of people would come listen to the reread or what have you. But it was kind of a dormant fandom for a little bit. And now with Amazon, it's like roaring back. So yeah, that's 2017 kind of when it started for he and I, and we just love it. We enjoy Middle Earth.
Yeah, I was saying, you told me that before, 2017. It feels like way shorter than we heard about this new giant show. But I guess it's just, I suppose it's only recently started really pick up steam and really gotten going. And there's people who are cast, and there's people who are shooting on location, and we're getting story just about the Second Age and everything. When you look forward to, what do you, a Lord of the Rings major fan, and I was too, by the way, back in high school, totally. Yeah. I read Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. I think a lot of folk of a certain age did, and then saw the movies and just kind of hit at the right time and all that stuff.
Not me.
What do you, Mia? How about you, Mia? How old were you? 9 when the movies came out?
What was it, 2002, 3?
1, 2, 3-ish.
Yep.
6, 7, 8.
Wow, that's offensive, and I would hear no more of it.
See my way out.
Yes. I love being old enough, but I don't want to say how old I am. Anyway, what do you, a big Lord of the Rings fan, want out of a giant, splashy, epic Amazon TV show?
Yeah, this is really interesting because the Second Age stuff is so vague, and I was even looking today before we started this to try to track down where do you go to find the Second Age stuff, and it's in a bit of it's in the Unfinished Tales. You have a bit at the end of the Silmarillion, but there's just not a whole lot there. There's more in the First Age. There's more stories and stuff. So it's kind of but they've kept it secret. They've kept it safe. It's not something we know a whole lot about. There's little tiny tidbits that come out on Instagram and Twitter. So I don't know really. I wanted to feel like the movies were so epic. They were so good. I even like the Hobbit movies. I know those get a little bit of flack, but I enjoyed those quite a bit. And for me, I just want that same kind of feel, I guess.
Sure.
I don't know. We feel like a Hobbit. And Lane and I, we always say that we're kind of The podcast takes place in the Shire. We're just hobbits. We're not gatekeepers. We don't know much about it. We're just fans who enjoy it, and we love to read it and talk about it.
Right.
But I feel like we were having a discussion the other day. We don't really know what are the Hobbit-like characters that you're going to connect with and feel grounded to in a second age. And so it's really interesting to kind of think about what they're going to do. Is it going to be elves that we kind of get behind? Are we going to follow them more, or Numenorians and men? I just hope it's epic. It's good. It's going to be because of the budget. You see the budget. It's I mean, and it's going to bring such a big audience, and people are going to be back into it. And the main thing, I guess, I hope that it inspires people to like a new generation to go pick these books up and to read them again, because when the films did come out, a lot of people my age, older and younger, went and said, what is this movie? And you went and picked it back up, and then you had your father or your mother telling you about it, and you're back in it and reading it. So I'm kind of hoping it does that again for a new generation. So
I can easily believe that. Yeah. I mean, well, if it's good, because I will say, like, so on this podcast, I'm kind of the resident
cynic,
grumpy curmudgeon. So yeah, there we go. That's a much better word.
Yeah.
So to me, like the giant Amazon Lord of the Rings show is sort of a product of this sort of post Game of Thronesy period, where Game of Thrones was this huge giant hit, right? Like, and we're Game of Thrones podcast.
Yep.
Just kind of did things on TV you couldn't do before. And Jeff Bezos famously said, like, basically, bring me a Game of Thrones, like, which is kind of where something like this is born. I do think that, that they want that big water cooler, epic, beautiful fan show that you can all talk about and you can all just get into, and they want all the theories on Reddit, and they want all the discussion, and they want all the Twitter discourse, and they want it all. And but we really haven't, seen like this big a swing anytime. And of course, I want it to be a complete home run and go out of like Fenway Park and like go back around the world and come back to the other side. But it's also a big risk, which is exciting because they're spending $1 billion on something that they need to be a giant success to like recoup anything. If it's anything less than a monstrous success, it's kind of like failed economically, which I find really interesting. And but I appreciate the risk. And I'm very glad you're around to remind me that it should be about the wonder of fantasy and reading the books, not about cold speculation.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm also a little bit nervous. Like, there for a while, you go without any show news. Like, it's in New Zealand, so they're keeping it top secret. We've just got the casting images and things. And some of the criticism out there is that these showrunners, Payne and McKay, are younger, kind of green, and like, I don't know. I think people pay a lot of attention to the showrunners now, especially since Dan and Dave, season 8, the whole thing. Like, that's it. Game of Thrones was huge, and so people are looking like, who's in charge of this, and saying, what have they done before? And I think it's got some people a little bit nervous. But the vibe that Lane and I get from them is that they're super fans. They're super passionate about it. What makes me nervous is like it's a second age in which there's like 2,000, 3,000 years worth of where do you bounce around? Which stories do you like hone in? I have no idea how you're going to do that. That's crazy. So I don't know, but I'm hopeful that it's going to be a success. And I just think going back to New Zealand and having the studio and having some familiar people around it, I think that'll be really good for it. And I'm glad they threw the budget that they did at it, because I think if they would have underdone it, I don't know. People expect so much with Lord of the Rings because of the movies and what Peter Jackson did, that if it doesn't come close to that, it is going to get some criticism. So
I think they probably could have come close to it without spending $1 billion, but I don't know. We haven't seen it yet. Yeah. Mia, like, as like a non Lord of the Rings super fan, are you looking forward to this? Like, are you all down to go to Middle Earth and mix it up with hobbits, elves, dwarves at all?
Possibly. I think it's the name recognition that kind of, I won't say that I hate I would say out of like the fantasy spectrum, like of course Game of Thrones is up there. And I would say Lord of the Rings is kind of up there for me.
Oh yeah.
As a more casual viewer. I ended up watching it around like the 2012. I talked to you about my Tumblr phase. That was kind of like when I really got into like all these fandoms and, you know,
good times,
some of the
good
stuff
times.
that included was the Lord of the Rings. So I did watch the movies. I got really excited about them actually. And I think it was because The Hobbit was coming out too. And I was like, oh, well, I like the actors in that. And I like Elijah Wood in this. So I think what will be hard for me, and maybe for book readers not so much, is that I got like attached to, you know, like Ian McKellen as Gandalf, and like I said, Elijah Wood, and
Sure,
you know, even Martin Freeman as Bilbo. So I'm kind of attached to that world. But I think Amazon has what it takes to, like, they've done great stuff like with The Boys, and you know, if it's something like Miss Maisel and stuff like, so they have not failed yet to my knowledge. And Invincible. So I think that they have what it takes to pull it off, and maybe add a little bit more Game of Thrones-esque drama into that too. And
some great comments here, by the way, and we'll get to them in a second, I promise you guys. Although I did want to ask you, Ezra, because you brought up the Game of Thrones-esque stuff. Did you hear, I'm sure you have, the reports that they're thinking of adding like some like spicy nudity and stuff into the Lord of the Rings show, which again feels like a sort of well, it worked for Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah, I know. And the crazy thing is when all this the news was coming out, and I'm a big Game of Thrones fan as well, and followed all of the drama with season 8 and all that craziness. So you had, I think it was Brian Cogman was like a show consultant for both. I mean, he went over to Lord of the Rings and early on was talking to Payne and McKay and just early on, like, how do you set up a big epic like this? I don't think it was any major consulting, but there was so much of this comparison to Game of Thrones that I think people have in their mind, like, oh, they're going to go for some shock factor, some nudity, you know, things like that. And I don't know. The big rumor out there was like they hired an intimacy coordinator, and Lane and I talked about the idea that you know, don't we all need an intimacy coordinator? But no, like it was like, I don't know what that means. You know, is that just like a romantic relationship, or are we actually doing nudity in this? And I think, I just don't know that Tolkien has never felt like a place where you needed that kind of stuff, or that it belonged.
It's a very chaste sort of story.
Yeah. So I'm nervous if they do that. I mean, hopefully there has to be a reason or some context for them to do that. And we have to really understand. I mean, if it's just thrown in there for clicks and views, then I think that's bad on Amazon. I hope they don't do that, because Lord of the Rings comes with such, I mean, all the book sales and all the history and the Tolkien estate. It has just years and years and years of, like, this fandom is huge, even if it's a little bit, you know, dormant here and there. It has its, you know, spurts, comes and goes. You're going to have a ton of people come watch it just because of Lord of the Rings, the name.
Yes.
I don't think you got it. I don't think you have to do that other stuff. And I hope they don't, but yeah,
you don't. I agree with you that of course they don't have to. I just worry that Hollywood is kind of reactive by nature, and they're very much like, well, this last thing was big, let's do what that thing did, and they might like throw it. But again, like, a show is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you like change things as you go and finesse things and all that.
Yeah.
There's some comments here because some of them are good stuff. As Wex is a secret target says, an intimacy coordinator, my career goals just got updated. Oh, Wex, you wacky rapscallion. I mean, that job is pretty interesting. Like, it's a pretty new job that I remember. I forget where it started. I believe it was on an HBO show. Like, I forgot. But yeah, it is for sex scenes. It's for what I understand. It's that they're there to make sure everyone is comfortable and make sure no one's asked to do something they don't want to do. And it's becoming like industry standard, which is pretty cool. But I agree with you. It does seem like there's just no fantasy story more sort of, it's not a bad thing, but Lord of the Rings is kind of sexless. There just isn't a whole lot of like carnal dimension to it. It just, that's something I never had, and that's fine.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's why I kind of like yeah, I know you guys cover Wheel of Time and other things like that. Like if you're Amazon and you want to do something with that show or whatever, I mean, like go for it. But this is just it's so vague, or if it's mentioned, it's just teased and it's like G-rated, like the Hobbits took a bath together or something, yeah, like so I don't know.
For like fanfiction, just here for that. Like Sam and Frodo, lots in fanfiction.
Right.
That's fine. As Wex says, it's not a Song of Ice and Fire talk. Like I can take the fantasy fix. Yeah, Wex, not a ton of Song of Ice and Fire news, Game of Thrones news this week, but we try to please. Miss Nicole says, I'm the cynical show critic in my family, you and me, Nicole. It's good to have high standards because there's a lot of content out there nowadays, and not a lot of it is quality. Very true. We're flooded with content, but what to watch, that's what you listen to us for. My expectations for anything Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones is set very high, which I agree. There are high standards, but before we move on, I will say it feels like the post Game of Thrones kind of fantasy boom is going pretty well. Like you got like The Witcher and you got Shadow and Bone and you got these shows that are finding audiences. So I have no doubt that when Lord of the Rings comes, it will find an audience, and whether it can go like whatever the distance is for this particular show, like you said, we're not really sure when it's set, how much it covers. That'll be determined, but I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, real quick, just I wanted to mention too, like the idea of you said the Game of Thrones boom, like the whole. Have you guys talked a lot about like the streaming kind of wars between like Amazon, Netflix? It's just it's great because we're getting stuff, but you do hope that the quality stays high, and that we're able to oversaturate things and just go wow. That's why I've actually been happy with like Marvel and Disney. I mean, there's been some I think pretty good, interesting stuff in their TV series, especially with Star Wars. But yeah, I'm hoping that I'm actually glad that Amazon has taken their time with Lord of the Rings, and we don't know much about it. Yeah, and that too. Yeah, sorry. And so yeah, I think it's good. I think take your time, good quality, and we'll be happy. We want a good show. So
yeah.
It is kind of cool. I thought we're going to move on, but like it is kind of cool that the Amazon's doing both Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time. Like they want to have two giant epic fantasy series on at the same time. Like again, reach for the stars. Why not? Well, we'll see how it goes. Speaking of Marvel doing really well, today marked the premiere of Loki, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe series on Disney Plus, following up on WandaVision and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The third, and I think we've all watched the premiere episode. I'll just kick it off and see what you guys think. I really liked it. I liked how confident it was. Like I loved the scenes that were just Tom Hiddleston's Loki and Owen Wilson's Mobius sitting in a room talking for a long time. And there's like this conventional wisdom in like any kind of show that like you got to get to the action bit, you got to get to the next thing, and just like they just sort of chatted about Loki's feelings and the way this time bureaucracy works and some exposition stuff, and there's a DDQ thing in the middle there, and it had the confidence to just kind of let them do it, and I thought it was really interesting, and their chemistry is great.
Yeah. Well, I can already say this. I told y'all I was really looking forward to this. This is my favorite Marvel character. Like favorite actors. Oh yeah. So I was super looking forward to this, and I was not disappointed. And it's kind of weird because I wrote up an impression for you on Winter is Coming, and I was this is everything you could want. It promises everything you want. And then it made me think, I was like, what do you want from a Marvel series? And it's kind of like, well, I don't know, because this is new territory, at least for Marvel Studios. Yeah, we've had S.H.I.E.L.D., Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil and all those things. But this whole wave of Disney Plus TV shows just feels so much more ambitious. Variety posted like this really long interview with like all the leads of the Marvel Studios TV shows. And it was quite funny that Anthony Mackie, when he was approached by like Kevin Feige to do Falcon and the Winter Soldier, he said that he was like shocked and a little bit kind of like disappointed that they would want him to do a television show, because he was like thinking it's gonna be like 60s Batman or something. And he's like, wow, you guys want me to do something like that? That hurts. And what if it like fails? And But, you know, we've all kind of seen now that it is just so much bigger than that. So with Loki being the third one, it's just so fairly consistent, but at the same time, its own different genre. You know, I'm a little over the hills, and I'm like, oh, only 6 episodes. I could just watch this over and over and over and over.
How about you, Ezra? What were your impressions of the first episode? By the way, is there a title for it? I don't even know.
Yes, I think it was Glorious Purpose. I just saw yesterday.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly, so I watched WandaVision and most of the Winter Soldier. I didn't finish all of that. Yeah. But this was awesome. I absolutely loved it. I love that they things feel connected, you know, with like the timekeepers and keeping this one timeline and the variants and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it instantly made someone like me go look up like what are all these Easter eggs? What are all of these individuals who I don't know about that are in the comic books buried somewhere? The fact that they're kind of pulling on some of that and trying to connect and maybe build us towards a larger villain, I think is just awesome. It's awesome storytelling. And then just to kind of watch Loki be in a place where he's powerless. And it was, have you guys seen, what is it? Is the Umbrella Academy? Have you seen the Umbrella?
Yeah,
I've seen that.
I felt like I was watching the what are they called? The time variance police or whatever they are, you know. They felt like something out of the Umbrella Academy where you went there and they were checking various points in time to make sure that they stayed the way they should. And so I thought it was really cool. It had me locked in and had me searching stuff afterwards. So I thought it was great.
Yeah,
That's a great comparison. It totally reminds me of the Umbrella Academy and they're like I think what they're called in there. Yeah, the whole time
go back and
police
fix
they
things.
have there. I mean, it's really impressive the way that Marvel is kind of expanding without tripping over itself, and the way it keeps getting bigger and bigger and doesn't collapse in. And like time travel is almost playing with fire, because like that is infamously hard to do right, and it always makes like contradictions and paradoxes. And there are even contradictions for, like, you know, I don't remember exactly. Like in Endgame, they went through an alternate dimension or something to get to the past, but now there's a sacred timeline. But I don't even care, because they're doing a good job of laying it out in the way that I kind of get, and anchored by that really, really fun chemistry between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston, which I think is the best. I thought Owen Wilson was great in the role, by the way. I'm not familiar with the character. I'm sure he's in the comics or something. But like, I love kind of his sort of laid back, two bowls in sort of energy, just like very kind of contrasting with Tom Hiddleston's Loki sort of over the top, like mania, talking about glorious purpose and wanting to just get all the time. Like really, really good point counterpoint. So I for myself really liking him in particular. And I can see, I'm not sure if it was just because of the novelty of someone being like having a new character being in a big important role, or if he's just that good. But I thought it matched really, really well with Hiddleston. So if that's like the base unit of what we're getting with this show, that's a great way to like pull me in and ground me so it doesn't float away on the wackiness of its concept stuff.
Yeah. For me, kind of as you were talking about earlier, was the whole like kind of uncracking this Loki character. And I really liked his progression, that by the time we got to, you know, the whole Taika Waititi Ragnarok, and then kind of the end game where he had this huge character arc that probably none of us were expecting. And, you know, he came close with Thor and, you know, accepted his father and all these things. And it was like we backtracked back to the, you know, Avengers, first Avengers him. I was like, how are they going to pull that off? You know, he had this grand arc and now he's kind of back to square one. And it kind of felt like it was like the crash course of, okay, let's, you know, kind of, we got to find a way to crack him open. We got to find a way to kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say get him back to the spot where he was. But I think the point I'm trying to make is I just like the fact that they did have this character exploration, which is something that they've been doing with, I would say, all of the other Marvel ones, right? We had that emotional episode in WandaVision where, you know, we went back in time and kind of looked at how she met Vision and how she had this tragic life. And, you know, Falcon and Winter Soldier is like Bucky is in therapy and Sam has like a sister and he's got to take care of his family and all that. So that's what I like about these Marvel shows, that we actually get to sit down with these characters, explore them a little more broadly. I was like, this stuff only happens in fan fiction. Like you only have that much time to, you know, for characters to talk about themselves when you're making it up in your head. So I was just kind of happy to see that play out on screen. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
By the way, I did Google Loki fan fiction to see what was there, but it's not really
There's
helpful.
nothing
There
there.
are already
There's nothing there.
55,000 articles. So
No, there's nothing there.
I think nothing about the show specifically yet, but maybe that'll come in time. Any other thoughts, Ezra, about the first episode of Loki or beyond?
Yeah, just as Mia was saying, I thought it was kind of cool that he actually literally sits down and he has this moment where you get to see him struggle, and we actually care about Loki a little bit and what's he going through. It's like, what? It was just cool to see like that insight, because he always has this big facade up, he's this braggadocious type of character walking around, which is awesome, which is funny and fits with the other Avengers. But this is all about him, and I was wondering, why would I care about Loki, and why am I going to be what role could he play, in all of this? And I'm sold. I mean, he's like the whole bit. I don't know if we, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a part where right at the end of the episode, I mean, something pretty major happens and he's a part of, working for this unit possibly. And it just looks sick. And I was like anticipating, hoping there was another, episode coming out, like they're going to do like a double drop or something. And I'd get it, but I'm pumped for it. I think they got me bought into Loki and I didn't think they could do it. So that's good. I
will say that Mia, you and I have watched the second episode because we're now on the screener list. But so do you have any theories, Ezra, about who the killer is?
I don't know. So I went and looked up like Easter eggs and people talking about like another big bad that could be coming. Just people were breaking down, and this is what I love about this. You can go look at the posters and see like the infinity sign, and they're making connections to Doctor Strange and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't actually know all of these villains to try to piece this together and see who it is we're actually trying to track down. Like the bubble gum apparently might be a clue of some kind that the girl was given.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
in the first one. Yeah. So I honestly am totally stumped. I looked up a name beforehand. It was like, hope it's okay to say this. Let's see.
This is a theory, yeah.
Kang the Conqueror is someone who is like in the comics, and it's someone who's a part of that whole timeline variant type of mischievousness, if you will. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just people, that's different blogs and stuff throwing out theories and stuff after the first episode. And so I was like, wow. And it just had me locked in saying, okay, who is that character? Let me go read about them and then go back and try to see if I could find any other clues, because I kind of like that. So I have no clue. I hope he's just on that is some big bad villain that he has to kind of track down, or that we're building towards another big villain in some way. So yeah.
God, I mean, this is perfect. This is exactly what Disney wants. They want everybody just on there and looking up stuff. I mean, yeah, they've had huge success. They've been just killing it so far with this stuff. So the best to that giant corporation. I hope they just do splendidly.
Yeah.
All right, Ezra, before you sign off, do you want to tell us where we can find you and your podcast on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me personally on Instagram or Twitter. It's at womprat_2M. So a little Star Wars reference there. Luke used to bullseye womp rats with, his T-16 back home, and they're no bigger than 2 meters. So, and then also our podcast, Lane and I run an unexpected podcast, Talkin Tolkien. And that is, I think it's at Talkin Tolkien on Twitter and on Instagram. So you guys can find us there with all the links to the podcast. So
we're just, come back anytime, because obviously there's a lot of cross breeding. I don't know, whatever. Pollination. There we go. Between Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, fantasy, sci-fi, all that crap. Hopefully we'll be seeing you around WiC again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And best of Lane. And here he's gone. All right. Thanks for coming on, Ezra. Talkin Tolkien, an unexpected podcast, Talkin Tolkien. I mean, yeah, he is right. Like, Lord of the Rings is coming up in the world, and might as well get on the wagon now. But you know what else coming up in the world, Mia? Another series that I personally am at. Okay, this is the first time we've seen it. I'm very, very excited about this because I love The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. I'm not like a huge comics reader. I read like some of like the big ones. Oh my God, it was so good. And Netflix is making a new series about it. And Netflix is having this thing called Geeked Week right now, where they are revealing things about Stranger Things and The Witcher maybe later, and all their kind of nerdier series. And they released a teaser for their adaptation of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, which has been around for a while. It has a reputation, but it's not like huge in the way that a Star Wars Lord of the Rings is huge. But if you're watching out there and you haven't heard of it, or you only heard of it in passing, I recommend getting into it because it's an amazing story, and this show could be the show of the century. Why don't we watch a little teaser right now? All right. So Mia, as someone, I'm going to guess you're not familiar with Sandman. Are you familiar with Sandman?
No, I'm barely familiar with anything, but I know it's really, really beloved. I know that much.
All right. Well, then, as someone who isn't really who is familiar with it, what do you think of that? Like, what does that teaser say to you?
A couple of things. Number one, Gwendolyn Christie. Love that.
Gwendolyn Christie, can't go wrong. As Lucifer, the Lord of Hell.
Oh, that's who she's. Yeah, I was like, she said Lucifer. I was like, that's her. Is that her character?
Oh yeah, it's Lucifer. She is the ruler of hell with two other people.
I'm loving that. But yeah,
but sorry, FYI, technically it's the same Lucifer that's in the Netflix show Lucifer, because the Netflix Lucifer show is a Sandman spinoff technically. Only they just skipped right to his part of it, and then decided to make him like an LA police detective for some reason.
Okay, that's interesting. But yeah, it looks really, really cool. We were kind of talking behind the scenes about like all the practical effects and how I like how involved it looks like Neil is in this. And he was talking about like these
cool.
are made for the fans by the fans, which when you're dealing with stuff like this, sometimes you don't always get that. You just kind of get whatever Hollywood spits out and says, this is what you get. So I think if I were a fan of this, this to me looks really, really promising.
Would be encouraging. Yeah, I agree. Again, the reason it can be made by fans and look this good, I do put it up. I do kind of chalk it up to the Game of Thrones effect, where this, giant, big fantasy show had this big success. And now suddenly that kind of thing is a economic reality in the minds of the executives who make these decisions. I fully think that's what happened. Like, and Neil Gaiman has said, like, he defended, he like warded off bad movie versions of this for like 30 years. This thing is 30 years old. This thing is 89.
Yeah, I was
for
wondering.
Decades he did. And now finally the opportunity, like the conditions are right for a thing like this. And Sandman is as far as like kind of big fantasy shows or series go, it is a challenging one. Because I mean, like, you think that like Loki and WandaVision are kind of like loopy and out there, like they got nothing on Sandman. Not that it's not trying to confuse you, but it's very kind of poetically paced and kind of like follows sort of a very non-linear path, and kind of takes these excursions into, history and the far future and the kind of very internal people's minds sort of thing. And I haven't said what it's about. It's about like a group of immortal anthropomorphic personifications of aspects of the human condition. So the main character is Dream, who is like literally the representation of dreams. He's played by, I forget his name, but the guy who looked like Neil Gaiman, but younger and hotter.
Tom guy.
Yes, Tom Sturridge.
I figured his name was Tom. I was like, he's British, and that's all I need to know. His name is Tom something. I'm sure of it.
There you go, definitely Tom. And he has siblings who are all also kind of that thing, like dream, desire, destruction, delirium, death, despair, and destiny. There we go. That's 70s. I got them all.
This all sounds vaguely familiar. I'm sure a long, long time ago I looked up the Wikipedia article because, like, what is this? I keep hearing about it. What is it? So it's sounding vaguely familiar.
It does, but right. I mean, I think I talked about it before too. Once or twice, because I really did like it. And and they explore what humanity means together, and there's like some kind of comedic subplots. There's one with like a serial killer convention that in the teaser kind of hinted that they'll be doing that one. That was a funny one. There's some that are very, very personal. A lot, like they intersect with myth a lot, and like there's Loki's in it actually, like not the Marvel Loki, but like literally the god Loki is in it, and Thor. I think Odin. I forget if Odin's in it. And they just like pop up. Cain and Abel are recurring characters from the Bible. They just hang out in the dreaming and just do stuff, that kind of thing. It was also way ahead of its time. Like Neil Gaiman made some waves recently because folk were upset that they cast a black actor, Kirby Howell Baptiste, as Death, who's like the runaway popular character from the comic anyway. And non-binary character Mason Alexander Park as Desire. And this comic was way ahead of its time. Like trans issues are kind of on the forefront now, but this had like fully trans and non-binary characters 30 years ago. Like, and it's not like coded either. They are trans and non-binary.
Oh wow.
Like so obviously it's fine to cast a non-binary actor as a non-binary character. In fact, it makes a lot of sense. So people are complaining because it's a whole cancel culture thing and blah 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 blah. But it was ahead of its time when it came out. It's been ahead of its time for a while. I think it's still ahead of its time, but its time has come for an adaptation. And I'm very excited to see what they can do with a story that has this much depth and artistry and interest. So I'm very excited about this if they can do it right. And now is the time to do it when the nerds have this kind of power and when all the streaming services are trying to outdo each other. So now's the time to do something like this. Loving it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say briefly, I was wondering, I was like, has this ever been adapted before? Because it comes off as something where like maybe in the late 90s or early 2000s you would have had a really shabby Warner Brothers, version of this. No one cared about it.
Legendary Journeys, basic cables, sort of like here's $8 in a shoebox. Do what you can. Yeah.
So good on him for waiting and holding out, and it's a hard thing to do. And hey, he found the right time. So good luck to him. I know it should be really, really nice.
Some good comments here from Talkin Tolkien. Thanks again. So much fun. Frodo Lives, just FYI, fun Lord of the Rings trivia, was what people in the 60s would like spray paint on subway tunnels after, because Lord of the Rings, like that was like its first big wave of popularity was the 60s. Wow. And like it kind of became like a countercultural thing because they spoke a lot of weed in those books and hippies like weed. And I'm not kidding. And Frodo Lives became kind of like a slogan that you like use to signal that you're in the know. You're a friend of Frodo. That whole thing. Got any weed? That too. As Julie says, wow, set looks amazing. Sounds like Legion on FX, says Nicole. Very trippy and dreamy. And I think this might be Richard talking. Will the DC characters show up? I vaguely remember Constantine, if he was superheroes, made an appearance. That's true. Oh, that's also true. Because like the Sandman is a DC comic book. Like it's technically part of the DC universe. Technically. It's very its own thing also too. But like at the start, like, yeah, Constantine, the DC superhero, is like in it. And there are like other kind of brushes against the DC universe. I think like Wonder Woman's granddaughter is in it or something, but it's mostly its own thing.
Fascinating.
I'm very fascinated.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. No release date yet. And there was a lot of other news reports, news stories this week about a lot of them about Netflix, other stuff. In fact, there are so many, we don't really have time to cover them all. So I thought we'd try something here. Mia, because there are so many news stories, we just don't have time to talk about them in depth. Why don't you just like hit me with a bunch and I will try to give my like 5-second summations.
All right.
And feel free to time me so we don't go overboard.
All right. Our first headline is N.K. Jemisin will adapt her Broken Earth trilogy for Sony. Dan, go.
Okay, Broken Earth, huge, 3 Hugo Awards in a row, very, very popular. They're probably a fantasy continent where storms wreck everything, and it's gonna be really good. Genius. Okay.
Indiana Jones 5 begins production.
Who cares? He's so old. No, that's fine. But just like Indiana Jones 5, I mean, I feel like it's like who really wants this? Okay, fine, we're over.
Netflix renews Shadow and Bone for season 2.
Of course they did. That show was very popular. It found an audience. It was pretty good. Young adult stuff, not my thing, but I'm happy it got renewed. So I hope people are satisfied.
All right, Netflix shelves Jupiter's Legacy, picks up spinoff Super Crooks.
I'm shocked that a superhero show actually failed. Like there are so many and they're all doing so well. This one, I guess, didn't do well enough. I'm shocked.
Oh, Netflix's Cowboy Bebop live action remake coming this fall with original composer Yoko Kanno on board.
Okay, weird. Live action. I mean, Cowboy Bebop, classic 90s anime, really fun, really stylish, really jazzy. I'll probably watch it, but I wonder how it'll do.
What We Do in the Shadows season 3 premieres on FX on Thursday, September 2nd. I'll give you 10 seconds for this.
I don't even need it. I'll just say it's okay. Yay, 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 hooray, awesome, fantastic. It's a wonderful show. Really, really funny. Love it. I want to watch it right now.
All right. The Nevers hires new producer. So I guess they're making more episodes.
Wasn't sure if they were because like it seemed like to get kind of mixed reviews and mixed ratings. But yeah, I guess they are, and I'm happy about it.
All right. Bonus. We have a photo for this one. Mark Ruffalo on the set. Oh.
And you react to this one.
Oh, I reacted this one.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you 10 seconds.
All right. Mark Ruffalo on the set.
Mark Ruffalo on the set of She-Hulk.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see Mark Ruffalo back in the saddle. You know, he's got all of his, you can't really see him as the Hulk, but it's exciting. I honestly don't know who he's posing with. I should have looked this up beforehand, but still looks
like
exciting.
A stunt double, I believe, or something like that.
Ooh, fun. Okay.
And it's over. And finally, what's the last one?
Okay, last one. Sophie Turner dyes her hair Sansa Stark red.
Yeah, does that mean she's coming back as Sansa? Probably not, but it makes me think she might. I want a Sansa Stark series. I'm just saying, miniseries Sansa Stark. Let's make it happen.
Ding, ding, ding.
And
that is our lightning round. Wow. Congratulations.
That was fun.
You did so well.
Time. Also, the main actress from Anne with an E on Netflix is joining the cast of Stranger Things next season. That just came in. They're doing all these things really fast. All right. I mean, there's a lot of news. We can't talk about it all. We might as well just try to bring it to you as quickly and digestibly as we can. Hope you enjoyed it. Anything else you want to talk about this week, Mia?
No, I think we're good. Like, I think with the Loki, I could have just said yay. Oh, Bad Batch. It's holding up. It's still, they have some good stuff here and there, and it's still very enjoyable. So I like what they're doing. And yeah, we still got a long way to go with that 16 episodes.
Yay. And yeah, beyond that, thanks for watching, everybody. You can see us every week right here on the Winners Coming Facebook or YouTube pages at every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, or 5 on the East Coast, and 2 on the West Coast. And also, we are available wherever podcasts are available, like Google Play, iTunes, so on and so forth. Take the black. Go on, rate us 5 stars, give us a listen, tell your friends. If we had a Patreon, we'd say donate to it, but we don't. So just do those other things. Thanks a lot for listening and for watching, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.